Hollow Knight is a game that succeeds at many things. Its combat is challenging but fair, its story is cryptic yet fascinating, and the animation is simply gorgeous. Yet overall, I think the game's most impressive feat is its tone. Wandering around the dim ruins of Hallownest, uncovering secrets and dodging dead-eyed bugs submerges you in a mood that would take ages to explain in words but only takes seconds of playing to understand. What's more, as more of the world unravels before you, you're treated to a variety of different kinds of environments that each present their own unique flavor without ever losing the game's underlying, unifying character. City of Tears is an area just dripping with atmosphere, with the constant downpour and moody color palette painting the player's first real realization of the scope of the ruins you've been exploring up until this point. The architecture and scale reveals that the world of Hallownest isn't just a network of tunnels. These ruins carry a history, a culture more sophisticated than we understood up until this point, and the music plays an integral part in conveying this grandness of scale. When you first drop down into one of the abandoned towers of the City of Tears, the music gently greets you with what sounds like a piano and harp doubling this figure. It's when you leave this tower and venture out into the City of Tears proper that the scale of the ruins hits you, and the music swells up with full string section and choir layered over top of the original track. Reinforcing the emotional intention of the game at any given point is what this soundtrack does best, and even with the wide variety of vastly different areas throughout Hollow Knight, composer Christopher Larkin treads the line beautifully between offering musical variety and maintaining a tonal identity that's consistent across the entire score. To better dissect this dichotomy, I'm going to explore two of the soundtrack's elements that I think are most notable: its atmosphere and the way it handles motivic development. As one of the standout tracks from the game, the City of Tears theme seems like a perfect specimen for this dissection. Firstly, the atmosphere. The basic track that scores this area is made up of a continuous 12/8 piano ostinato figure made up of the notes E-flat, F, and B-flat. You could think of it as an E-flat sus2 triad, or you could think of it as a stack of fifths. This ostinato is consistent throughout the piece, rarely changing at all, but the other elements of bass line and melody that enter recontextualize this same figure into a variety of different chords: A-flat 6/9, E-flat add 2 over G, and C minor 11 to be precise. Having pedaled tones that remain consistent over top of a changing chord progression is a common technique to making atmospheric music, and this exact same technique is used in Green Path's score, another area from the game. Again, we have a stack of fifths being played as a repeating ostinato figure by what sounds like a harp, that gets recontextualized as a bunch of different chords by the addition of bassline and melody. The orchestration, rhythmic concept, and harmony between these two pieces are completely different, but the compositional approach is identical, and the shared approach gives these pieces a similar enough character to feel like part of the same world, even in spite of their differences. This unified tone across the soundtrack is also aided by Larkin's melodic approach. City of Tears' melody consists mostly of whole notes sitting squarely on some colorful extension of the underlying chord. The opening bars sees each melodic phrase starting on and coming back to either the major seventh of our tonic E-flat sus2 chord, or the ninth of our relative minor C minor 11, and it's these types of colorful notes that give this tune an emotional quality. Again, this is a concept that Larkin weaves all over his soundtrack, making it part of the game's musical character. Dirtmouth is a perfect example of a melody that spends most of its time sitting on these kinds of colorful extensions. The use of the ninth over a minor chord is specifically a sound that comes up all over this soundtrack. So we have some insight into how Larkin created the atmosphere for the City of Tears, and how he connected it to the rest of the game's soundtrack in a natural way. But not all areas require the same kind of musical atmosphere, as each corner of Hallownest has its own unique story to tell. The Soul Sanctum, an area found inside the City of Tears, was once where powerful bug scholars searched for immortality, performing arcane rituals harvesting soul from other bugs. Exploring the failed remains of these cruel experiments certainly gives the area a sinister feeling, and the music reinforces that, but it also adds a tragic element to the proceedings. The ominous organ that takes the reins as you enter the sanctum also lends an erudite element to the music, and the rolling 12/8 rhythms of the city's piano shifts to a slower 16th note pattern. To me, the music gives off a sense of regret that feels more and more appropriate the more you explore the lore of the Soul Sanctum. Where City of Tears' open quintal sound fit the beautiful ambiguity of the area, this new organ ostinato outlines a minor triad with a flat sixth on top to better serve the vibe of a creepy bug experiment laboratory. That being said, there are still several compositional through lines between these two pieces. This ostinato figure once again remains consistent against a changing bass line that recontextualizes it into a series of dejected minor chords. The most obvious connection to the City of Tears is the use of its melody, note for note, reharmonized by this bellowing organ to be in the key of C minor. After a couple statements of the melody in this new, darker setting, we see an interesting fake-out as our first inversion 5 chord sets up a return to the C minor tonic, only for the bass to descend by half step to plant us squarely in the key of B flat minor. The melody, instead of shifting down a whole step to accommodate this modulation, keeps all of the notes where they are and just changes the key signature to make them fit with the chords. This gives us an entirely new version of the same melody with the exact same melodic contour. Once again, we see a beautiful contrast of brand new ideas and reused ones, simultaneously giving this section of the game a completely unique personality without it feeling at all out of place. This questline comes to an end as you take on the boss of Soul Sanctum, the Soul Master. His theme ties together many of the elements from the previous two themes we've looked at. The bellowing organ chords continue Soul Sanctum's C minor tonality, but this time supported by a return of a string section, choir, and 12/8 time signature, with the City of Tears melody brought back and doubled by both organ and choir. Soul Sanctum's arpeggio of the tonic minor triad with the flat sixth on top makes a return in the low strings underneath our melody, but instead of being an ostinato figure that gets fleshed out harmonically by the surrounding elements, this figure moves around to outline a basic triadic chord progression. Notice how how different the tone of this piece is from the previous examples, even in spite of the similarities. Larkin wasn't going for something atmospheric here, as that would hardly be appropriate for a climactic boss battle, so his ostinato technique gets the axe. In its place, the harmony jumps around chromatically to keep the player from finding any really solid footing. Notice the relationships these reharmonizations have with the melody. Instead of sitting on colorful chord extensions, these notes are harmonized mostly as the root of their respective chords, with the initial second over C minor chord excluded. This serves to better highlight the erratic harmony and allows you to focus more on the rhythmic intensity of the piece. Notice also the reference to Soul Sanctum's B-flat minor version melody as one of the several chromatic harmonic leaps in the second half of the melody. Now, everyone always talks about leitmotifs as melodic fragments, myself included, but you can just as easily weave other musical ideas such as texture, orchestration, and compositional approach throughout multiple tunes as we see in this game. The Soul Master theme feels like the culmination of the themes the player has been hearing drawing up to this point, thanks to the way it ties into and builds on the ideas put forward throughout the City of Tears and Soul Sanctum. This kind of score writing really excites me. I love the idea of a composer being able to develop themes organically across a world as a player experiences it. It's like open world musical development that just isn't possible outside of the world of video games. Honestly, there is so much more to dig into with this soundtrack that I could talk about it for a month. So I will! Stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 of this Hollow Knight series coming out next month. Big thanks to patron Reuven Reuter for suggesting this topic, and Carmen Calabrese for suggesting this topic. Not to mention Carrie G. Lewis Jr. and Emil Lundberg and Miles Wingett and A52 and Keybun, all for suggesting this topic. I'm finally doing it, guys. If you'd like to join their ranks and support this channel, feel free to check out my Patreon here, or consider buying a t-shirt here. You can follow me on Twitter at 8BitMusicTheory. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.